Yeah, so this episode we kind of changed some things around on the back end. And you guys, let me know if you like it more, if you like it less. We're still like really early into this series. I'm going to be doing the show for quite a long time. So, yeah, the first like 20 episodes, I'm going to be testing a lot of things. All right. Yeah. So with that in mind, let's get started. Despite the terrible news, and how I've been feeling, well, I mean, I'm not exactly gonna like brighten up your day with some of the news. But I hope this brightens up your day. I saw something really interesting. Take a look.
20 years ago, the world fell to shit. Cities put up walls to protect themselves and threw the criminals out so they could fight over what was left. But there are humble motherfuckers like me delivering cargo from one walled city to another. And that's where the cars and guns come in. Give me the package, man! So if I'm here, then the exit is... Oh, they have a Foot Locker. Oh, son of a...
Welcome to New San Francisco. I want to hire you. Pick up a package, bring it back. I can make your every wish come true. So, John, what do you wish for?
Toilet paper. 2-ply.
I think I can do better.
3-ply? All right, Evelyn, let's deliver this package. It's rude not to introduce yourself before pulling a gun on someone. Oh, this is rude. If you put the gun down, I'll drop you off as close as I can to where you're going. She's quiet. She don't talk.
Motherfucker, eat shit.
Much.
You have no idea what's out east.
Even the people trying to bring the law back are dangerous.
This is our land. These are our roads. And they're gonna have to go through Vegas. We both know who rules Vegas, John.
Hi, everybody.
I've never seen anyone cut off a human head and catch it as good as that.
This is gonna be fun.
Peekaboo.
This never happened to me before. Really? Yeah. Oh, man.
Oh my God, it's DMV.
What's down the red line?
No, please!
Cool. Screams.
So, pretty interesting. Yeah, so there's an announcement. We're getting a Twisted Metal series. Um, it doesn't look grim and dark. I don't know. I looked at it and I guess I feel like it's not going to be that good because Twisted Metal is a really dark story, right? It's basically a whole bunch of insane people fighting to the death, and that might be a little hard to sell as a TV series. Like, imagine that pilot. People would be like, no, no. But I would say if they were to do something more true to Twisted Metal and the brand, they should do something like American Horror Story. Like those, there are some like it's kind of like dark, it's kind of horror-y. It plays it pretty straight, right? Mysterious. Although a lot of the series, a lot of the seasons end up kind of being the same, right? Everything's like cool until this person's actually evil. But yeah, it's like post-apocalyptic wasteland themed from what I saw in Twisted Metal. I mean, I guess that's the lore. What is the lore to Twisted Metal? Twisted Metal. Huh. Twisted Metal. Blah, 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 lore. Uh-huh. Individual game. How about the story? Film adaptation. Uh-huh, okay. Oh, okay. So they were going to do a Twisted Metal movie. Sony was going to take up a Twisted Metal movie. And it got canceled because it just seemed like the fan base didn't want it. Feeling the series fan base did not warrant the higher budget it would have cost. What are they saying? They're saying that the fans aren't worth it. That's basically what they said. I'm checking out the wiki for the film adaptation. Um, that's, I mean, I'm sure there's some context to that. I don't think they would just like blast all Twisted Metal fans. I do like my post-apocalyptic stuff, it's kind of neat. I don't like the Mad Maxy looking vibe though. I think it's like kind of overdone. You got id Software with Rage, you got Mad Max games, you got like the kind of Fallout deserty. Well, I think of New Vegas, and you got that kind of going on. We need like modern, like in the middle of a post-apocalypse. Like it's post-apocalyptic like now. I think that is the best way to do it. Because you want to see like you don't want to see like empty streets all the time. That's been done to death. Huh. A movie was too expensive because nobody would watch, so make a series that nobody would watch. I mean, it's got to be something, right? Because you can serve ads in the TV series. You can sell it to like Amazon or something later down the road. Um, I think it's all right. I honestly really wanted to see it. We'll see. The sweet tooth thing, though. I mean, they did not emphasize any of the darkness in the world. Like Sweet Tooth's character was like I don't know. He went insane and he started killing people. He started like hunting people in his ice cream truck. Like I think even that character was based on like some real life serial killer that used an ice cream truck or something like that. Don't quote me on that. Um, legal issues. Frosty Treats filed a lawsuit against Sony contending that Sweet Tooth infringed on their safety clown. Wait, what's safety clown? I don't know. That's interesting. So, yeah, there's that. Other highlights. It's Peacock, which I don't know what the fuck that is. Let's look at Peacock. It's an NBC Universal thing. I barely hear about them. I wonder. It's $5 a month. So yeah, it's like $5 a month is so cheap. I like how their plans, if you take a look at their plans on the Peacock page, they have two plans. One is called Premium and one is called Plus. So basically there's no basic, right? Premium is basic and plus actually feels less than premium. So I think they just need to reword it. I think part of it is like they're not offering that much. So to like kind of to get that like premium vibe, they just named their basic service premium. I don't know. Or maybe they compare it to basic as in you just get the television channel. I don't know. But it's okay. So what you're basically paying for is kind of like a on-demand movies. So interesting that Twisted Metal will go directly to Peacock. I don't know if that's a good sign or not. If it goes to Netflix, you're gonna expect one, production value is pretty high, and two, you're gonna expect that the series might just end abruptly because Netflix loves to launch new shows, but I guess they're very particular on who they push for a season two. So yeah, there's that, and there was also some news. There's this boy who was 17 at the time, and now he's 18. Arion Kutaj. He's a kid who hacked and got early leaks of GTA 6. He also hacked Nvidia, also hacked Uber, and he worked with the group, but he was apparently the one that got caught, and he's on trial for the hacks. Now that he's 18 or something, but he's not apparently the court says he's not physically fit for trial, like mentally fit for trial. So I don't know what's going on with this kid, but he I don't know, leaking GTA 6 stuff, it's like it's gonna get you in the slammer pretty fast. The Take-Two has money. Yeah, and if Twisted Metal, if the story is not connected to original, I think it's gonna get lost. The original talks about like kind of like it has like a dark side that not many shows dare to touch, right? Usually a show has one crazy person. Not many shows has like 16 crazy people, like like everyone's freaking nuts, because it's hard to identify with any one character because they're all so traumatic. And it might be too much. I mean, they could handpick like 6 characters, but it's pretty rough. Anyways, yeah, those are just some highlights for the week. So today's show, we're using basically the same format, but you might see some things that are different, and let me know. But it's Sega of America unionized under Aegis. And the second topic is NVIDIA fights to stop Intel's Battle Mage. Oh boy. I mean, I don't think there's been one episode where I stopped talking about NVIDIA. I think I'm on this like GPU thing where I don't know if it's like the news is only GPUs or I'm like looking for it, but honestly, yeah, NVIDIA can't stay out of the news. But what's interesting is Sega. So Sega of America is just one of the many locations. They have Sega Australia, Sega Japan, obviously, and there's different headquarters, but under the same umbrella, Sega has kind of the same policies on the back end, right? So since we're talking about Sega America unionizing, well, it is kind of a shocker how Sega has been doing business for a long term. But before we get into that, I want to talk about the future of Sega, or I want to show you this thing. It's so artsy.
人が感動するのはどんな時だろうか。胸が高鳴る時、心が躍る時、もしそこに法則があるとすれば、私たちは一つだけ知っている。それは今までになかった体験、未知の驚きと出会った時、人は心が動かされるのだと思う。ゲームは能動的なコンテンツだ。見るだけの受動的なコンテンツとは性質が異なる。ゲームの主人公はプレイヤーの判断と一つになった時、オリジナルのキャラクターに生まれ変わる。そう、ゲームはプレイしてもらって初めて完成するのだ。今回セガの新しいアイデンティティを作るために、私たちはユーザーのリアクションに注目した。人は今までになかった体験をした時、どんな反応をするのか。表情が変わる、声を上げる、体が動く。いや、最初に反応するのは実は目だ。他の動物に比べて嗅覚や聴覚が弱い分、人は目に頼る。その分表情がとても豊かなのだ。そこで我々は実際にセガのゲームを体験してもらい、目の動きをトラッキングし、音とビジュアルに変換させた。世界で初めてのアイデンティティの誕生。この世に人がいる限り、私たちはアメイジングを作り続ける。
今までにない驚きをもっと。
Sega, amazing apparently. So what you saw in that video is kind of a promotion for Sega, right? It doesn't really say much except like we're very cool, right? They portioned out a budget to say Sega is futuristic, Sega's very cool, track their eyes and convert it into sound. They're just being very artsy and creative, and they're basically implying they're very future forward, like thinking. But unfortunately, Sega has some butt backwards support for their staff. Sega, from the very birth of Sega back in the 90s, like they have been not great to their staff all these years. For the majority, for a third of Sega's longtime staff, they do not have great benefits. And even the people working under them that are contracted are treated very poorly. Let me see. Let's see. Says unions are the norm. Says I'm European. Unions are the norm, and your American ways are bizarre. It's a good event, though. I'm not going to call it a good first step. I think it's going to get stamped out quickly, eventually by the firing of every union member and hiring someone else, because you guys don't have laws protecting a person, only corporation. What's up, 8.5? Jarmate Eno. Yeah, like that's kind of the difficulty with it, navigating unions. But before we jump to that, I want to talk a little bit about how Sega has treated some of their collaborated, like contracted work. Do you guys know the game Sonic Origins? Sonic Origins is a 4-game compilation of old Sonic remasters. It has Sonic 1, Sonic 2, Sonic CD, and Sonic 3 and Knuckles. Well, as Sega was scrambling to bring this compilation together, they had a side project where they outsourced a Sonic 3 and Knuckles game to Headcanon. This one-person developer to remaster the whole game, and it was going to be a standalone game. They were going to do Sonic 3 and Knuckles as a standalone game, nothing to do with Sonic Origins. It's two separate projects. But at some point towards the end of the development cycle for Sonic 3 and Knuckles, so Sega, I almost said Sony. I say Sony all the time. So if I say Sega, if I say Sony, then you know. Yeah, like they just took his game and they incorporated it into the compilation. And if you do coding and you're familiar with like development and just how things work, when you take a whole game that is not built to be integrated into another program, you're going to have a lot of conflicts. And Sonic 3 and Knuckles for that compilation was pretty awful. There were glitches and crashes and all these things happen. Don't say Sony, say Ga. Oh God, I just got it. That's so bad. So bad, but you got me. So yeah, like Sonic Origins, right? The developer was like, dude, I made this game for this one thing, and then you shoehorned it into like another. What's up, Allison? And it just, like, of course things are gonna break, right? If you don't take these things into mind. So this is what that developer said. Simon Tomley, founder of Headcanon, who is also Headcanon, a sole developer, he does have other people. He said, "I won't lie and say that there weren't issues in what we gave to Sega, but what is in originals is also not what we turned in. Integration introduced some wild bugs that conventional logic would have one believe were our responsibility. A lot of them aren't." So yeah, he has openly stated on Twitter like that this is not the project I submitted, and all the janks is due to Sega. So Sega seems to have, like, this is one instance where Sega's time management and deadlines are just kind of tight. They shoehorn something in to make it to fit the deadline, right? But it's not the first time Sony did that. Sony also did that in Australia with Golden Axe Reborn. But it's not actually Reborn. You see, Golden Axe, you remember that beat 'em up from like the old days where it's like, Streets of Ragey except fantasy, right? You got a axe, and I guess you're looking for a golden axe. And so I can't help but think about this tangent, but there's this YouTube series with Sonic, and they use the Golden Axe dwarf. If you know what Sonic for Hire, if you ever watch Sonic for Hire, they use the dwarf from the Golden Axe series, and I just keep thinking about that dwarf. If you look it up, you'll see what I'm talking about. So yeah, anyways, Golden Axe Reborn. It was once again contracted to one person to make a technical demo, a playable demo, mind you, actually, where people can play a remastered version of the Golden Axe games. But this technical demo was contracted to be done in 2 weeks from scratch. Code base, graphics, everything, a whole level designed in 2 weeks. The person by the name, what's his name? Tim, I think. We'll see in the slide. He worked on this game for 7 days a week, right? Every single day for 2 weeks for 14 hours just to get it out on time. And then when he submitted it to Sega, do you know what Sega did? They put it on the Steam page, but instead of calling it Golden Axe Reborn, they called it Golden Axed because of how janky and buggy it was. And of course, if you're asking someone to basically release a game in 2 weeks with a full remaster and it's a one-person team doing all this work, it's not going to be that great. You have no time to play test. And the fact that it runs, and yeah, it's janky, crashes, lag, you know, the whole gamut of like computer software problems, game problems, right? So on the store page for Steam, Sega has called it Golden Axed. And in their description, they had specifically called it out as a janky game, but charming. So obviously, if you made a product, you're contracted to make this product in a very short period of time. And you did your damnedest because, you know, sometimes you can't hit the mark that you want to hit. And that really sucks. And then to have the publisher bash it, that's, I don't know how you guys feel about that, but take a look at this. Tim Dawson, right. He said on Twitter, this is the developer for Golden Axe Reborn. This project was my personal nexus of nightmare hours, inept management, industry realizations, and heroics achieved with a small team under unreasonable conditions. So it's an odd feeling to see it surface 8 years later without context, credit, and with a joke title sequence. And honestly, yeah, he was not happy with it. And after he tweeted this, after he added Sega quickly backpedaled because they said, you know, they realized that they were basically using it to make fun of the developer, and with this guy's name on it, it just didn't, you know, it's career crushing, especially for a sole developer, right? And by the screenshots and the gameplay I looked at, it's kind of interesting. I saw like a GIF of it, and it, you know, it looks, you know, fine, but for 2 weeks, it's probably pretty great. So anyways, Sega backpedaled and they changed the title to Golden Axe Reborn as intended. They took out the description that says it's janky, you know, and they basically had all encouraging words, you know, support this work and everything like that, you know, the typical PR speak, right? So Tim did not have it. He was pissed off. He was so pissed off that his final tweet on the matter was this: go F yourselves, parasites. He was livid. He felt like this is super unprofessional, and he knew what he said was unprofessional, but he was enraged. So this is kind of what happens in development when it comes to Sega. Apparently their deadlines are super tight, and they're just not up to date with supporting their staff. A third of all of Sega's longtime staff at Sega of America. See, I knew it slipped, right? Sega of America. They're not, first of all, they're paid. They're underpaid compared to industry standard. They are also, some of them aren't considered full-time. Like, how do you work full-time and not considered full-time for many years, you know? Because then Sega shit. Sega doesn't have to like worry about like handling benefits for these like contracted workers, right? So it kind of goes to show, like, if you are doing contracted work, you should seek out a company that will give you coverage for the time being, for the length of that contract work. It does exist. Just because you're doing contract work, doesn't mean you're treated any less as other staff. So some companies are great with that. So Sega is not great with that. Sega is pretty awful with that. And that's why there was such a big need for a union. So for those of you who aren't familiar with a union, it's basically a whole bunch of workers in a company or industry or trade. They band together to form a majority of workers who are ready to go on strike and to negotiate demands, reasonable demands, usually reasonable demands from a company or entity, right? So the key things that they kind of ask for is like pay, right? Pay us what we are deserved. Conditions. Some work conditions are maybe too cramped, unsafe. Hours. Oftentimes, especially in game development, people are expected to, or people in tech, they're expected to be on more than the 40 hours per week. Part of the benefits and time off is also cut, right? In terms of Sega. So they formed Aegis. Sorry, I say Aegis. Aegis, Allied Employees Guild Improving Sega. They took it to a vote and they had 92 people gain a super majority vote over 26, I believe, out of a 200 person company, right? So a lot of people were kind of voting for it and they kind of had enough. You say Aegis because it's not Aegis. AE is pronounced E. I know this, but I grew up saying Aegis. Oh well. Well, you live, you learn. There are some words that are pronounced differently though. I know there's a tangent. Like Daedalus, right? Daedalus is actually Daedalus because it's AE. I don't know. It might be the American vernacular. AE is not a common word in American. In perfect American. Yeah, so I mean, honestly, with this, it's a great start to developers, game developers, like having something to a platform to like negotiate terms with the mother company. Sega wasn't the only company to do that. Raven Software was also able to do that under Activision Blizzard, which is quite insane. You've heard some of the news about Blizzard in yesteryears, but that's the type of stuff that sparks Raven Software for standing up. The type of stuff Blizzard got caught doing, the sexual harassment cases, the lack of diversity in higher roles. There was no path to promotion. It was like just very controlled and it's very toxic. Riot was the same way too. Yeah, I think like this is one of the very few game development companies that has been able to unionize. ZeniMax, ZeniMax, Bethesda, ZeniMax, yeah. They were also able to unionize. there was like another Blizzard um group that was able to unionize. I mean, there were like there's only a handful. There's only like five, and one of them's like an indie company. So this is pretty monumental in terms of the scale, like in the scope of like unions in gaming development, in game development. So I guess the question is, how will Sega of America unionizing affect other AAA game development studios? Like, is this going to trend? Is this going to inspire more companies to take action? So let's see what you guys said about Sega's unionizing. 88A has said, you can work without crunch. It's called humane conditions. It's what you do when you don't bend over backwards for the stakeholders. I don't know. Crunch is like, is almost expected now. Well, it is expected. But a lot of companies promise there will be no crunch. And then they end up going to crunch. Companies like Bethesda, companies like GGG, Path of Exile was at the beginning like a great work environment, and they said they don't have crunch. They have crunch. They have hard crunch, especially with the content cycles at the speed that they're like churning out stuff. Yeah, it's pretty ridiculous. Yeah, so is Sega of America unionizing? There's Sega Japan, there's Sega Australia. I don't know if there's a Sega Canada where they have like maple syrup for lunch. Because you work in Sega Canada, you get free maple syrup with every lunch break. Like, I don't know. I like my Canadians. I love my Canadians. They're funny people. There's no Sega Canada? Well, there damn should be. Jarmate says, I think they get better games made if the workers were treated fairly or reasonably. Yeah. That's definitely a possibility, right? Happy people make happy products. More likely to make happy products. It's not exactly, a universal truth, but if you're happier, you tend to do better, right? So it just makes sense. Sokoro says Japan usually has the final say on most Sega titles, though. Yeah, and that's probably why these deadlines are so crunchy, right? They're crunchy because Sega Japan is like, I need it in 2 weeks, and then they don't specifically know the team. They just coordinate the global release schedules across the whole Sega brands. So stakeholders, shareholders, it's I like the stakeholders, the one with the stakes. Those people are my friends. Sega also has Atlas that probably won't follow the so-called union structure. I mean, every single branch will have to unionize in their own way. It's not going to be adopted. The company's not going to adopt it for you. You're going to have to coordinate with other branches and learn their strategy, because when people try unionize, right? When people try unionize, companies start firing people. They find the tiniest infragment, and I can't think today, guys. I'm sorry. Infringement. It's not infringement. Infraction. There we go. God damn it. Yeah, they find the tiniest infraction. It's like, oh, you're late, right? But I'm always late 5 minutes, and I stay longer, which is never a good excuse, but whatever, right? And then Sega's like, no, write you up, boom. And that's how they end up taking out union leaders. People who start unionizing the leaders or the most vocal of the bunch usually get fired weeks later. It happens. It just so happens all the time. Some companies even go to extent of putting anti-union propaganda in break rooms. They start sending out emails like why you should say no to unionization, right? And then usually their biggest way of convincing you not to unionize is that, oh, they take a part of your paycheck. So, let's see. The company promise is the first step in disappointment. Do not try to make decisions not on promises, right? Especially from companies, unless it's promised pay. But even then, like salary, right? Contractually, salary. I don't know. Yeah, it's a good thing, but it's really hard to do. Am I a developer or designer or work in the industry? I have worked a little in HR. I have worked in esports. So I worked in the corporate side of esports. Yeah, I had a Call of Duty team, Overwatch team that like I was supporting. So I just have interest in this stuff, right? In tech in general. I'm more of a hardware person. I like my hardware and software. But this is important because without the people, we won't get the software. Without the software, we have to go outside and touch grass. So, kind of sucks for you guys because if you guys remember, I bought grass. I don't have to go outside. Says unions protect their members from frivolous crap like those. They even cover the legal costs. Companies, more often than not, use bullshit reasons. They don't have a leg to stand on. Yeah. Yeah, that seems to be the case. And we kind of addressed the second question, but second question was like, what effects will we see as consumers if a company is unionized, right? We talked about it. We talked about happy people making happy games, right? We talked about we just talked about like people who have worked a long time having benefits, staying with the company longer. There's less rotation of staff, and therefore the product becomes more consistent. If you have people who are burning out in your development cycle, well, I can't say that's what happened to Duke Nukem Forever, but in a way, that's what happened to Duke Nukem Forever because the team kept changing because the vision kept changing. And it's not exactly one for one here, but like you may end up with a game that's handled by a whole bunch of different people and companies will release it in a janky state. What about the argument that unions protect only the people that are in? Yeah, that is true too. In some cases, but a good union will, I mean, that's part of the deal, right? Because in order to reap the benefits, you got to support the union. And if you're against supporting the union, then because you're working with individuals, right? And whenever you have a case or something, you share it with your union representative, and it's up to them to pass on that information to the rest of the union leadership team. And if you are like not friends with Sally or whatever, the union rep, then she's not gonna, pass on your concerns. That's just how it is. Sokro says, I'm in a union for my work. As long as you pay union dues, they usually protect you. That's the point. More people in the union, more power. The collective matters. It's hive mentality-ish. It's hive minding. However, once you stop, that does cut off. Yeah, it's kind of like an insurance plan. It's part of, it's like an active insurance plan. Where they're more proactive than insurance. I have had some experiences with unions that I wasn't particularly happy about, but I still recognize that they do matter. They do help people who are like somehow working like over 10 years and not full time. It's just, yeah, that's like, I think it's just good for the industry. But my bottom line is, right, if you make good games, then I would hope that's because the developers are in a good place, not because the developers are crunched, right? Because what I want is good software, good games. That's always going to be like my number one. But you're not going to get that with unhappy people. I mean, if I'm down to cut their prices, they will fight me, even if I have nothing to do with them. Yeah. It's not hive mentality. It's safety in numbers. Companies screw over individual because they can't fight back, especially financially. But unions, yeah. This is what your union dues are for. It's to fund these negotiations, right? How many gaming unions are there? About five, six. From what I've seen, it's most half of it is like Blizzard because Blizzard culture got way too toxic in 2020. Blizzard had staff like molesting people. They had the tech guy in Blizzard was putting cameras under the bathroom sink to film people in the toilet. Like, stuff like that, like, I mean, yeah, I would be pretty surprised. I mean, like, I'd be pretty surprised that a union was not founded under those conditions, but it's not across the board. It's only some divisions of Blizzard, right? So same case with Sega. Is this going to spread? First of all, before we even think about it spreading far beyond Sega, this union needs to survive in Sega America. And then other Sega employees should also unionize. Australia, Japan, like all these things need to happen because if they cannot solidify a union within the company like that, then it makes it much more difficult for other. It's inspirational. That's why I'm saying it's inspirational to other companies and workers. Unions will never happen in Japan, sadly. Unions will probably happen in Japan last, which could mean forever. Yeah, Japan definitely has a different culture when it comes to like how cutthroat things are. Same with South Korea. Yeah, if you're like not the best, you're like basically not worth. Yeah, the work culture over there is like you're basically on the clock all the time, and it's expected. That means, on your way home, you're still answering emails and you're still expected to do work when you get home. You leave at 5, but you only leave so you could go home and do work, make an instant ramen, and then go to sleep. So that's kind of how the culture is turning in Asia. Yeah. But anyways, yeah, a lot of companies super against it. It is unlikely, but if people want to change the landscape for tech, this needs to be done because tech companies will keep taking more and more. Sokro says it's expected to do work and to provide for the company. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, well, that's also part of the job, but the demands of the job definitely are not updated in a lot of cases, right? Like, so, yeah. I think that kind of covers this topic. The second one, says if companies are against it, all the more reason to fight for it. Yeah, actually, I forgot the details. There was this one company who has spent like 300 million. I think it's talking about the industry as a whole. In America, companies spend over 300 million a year just to stop unions from forming. $300 million just to stop unions from forming. If you looked at like Starbucks, how they unionized, it was like such an uphill battle for them. Yeah, it's like, it's just company propaganda. The mindset should change. Ain't that what boomers call quiet quitting? Oh, jeez. Oh, God. Even Barnes and Noble started a union. Wait, there are still Barnes and Nobles out there? Wait, there's still one, right? I think there was one. For those of you who are not familiar with Barnes and Nobles, it's a bookstore. We used to have a lot of these bookstores. Oh, the flagship in New York. Oh, really? Okay. All right, yeah. We used to have a lot of bookstores, especially when I was like growing up, right? I didn't like reading, right? It's fucking ironic. When I was a kid, I didn't like reading that much. And then when I got older, I liked reading a lot more. And then all the bookstores are gone. Like, so they started the unionization talk and got pretty far from what you've heard. I mean, all the bookstores are now like Amazon books, right? If there are bookstores. And also Barnes and Nobles, like they went from selling pure books to board games to like toys to electronics. Like I think you could buy a PlayStation like at Barnes and Nobles. Like it's wild how industries have changed so dramatically. Hard copy books are still valuable. Yeah, I like hard copy books for kind of collecting. And like obviously reading whenever I want. It's different when it's like a PDF. It's actually harder to keep track of a PDF when it comes to a book because I keep track of so many things on cloud storage. It ends up like it's like I have a section for music, I have a section for production music, I have a section for production sound effects, music for YouTube videos, and then it's like that's just music, and then I got graphics, and I got documents. It's like it's just my storage, my cloud storage has just become like its own library of sorts. And ironically, that library does not have room for books. So, the second topic for today is NVIDIA fights to stop Intel's Battle Mage. And for good reason. Take a look.
intent is to talk directly to the consumer, directly to the gamer.
What I want is a true viable other option for gamers, and I want you guys to come in and be the good guy.
The gameplay is fluid, it's very, very smooth. It's a great way to showcase what the ARC architecture can do. We're not just building chips, Ryan. No, not just chips. We're doing the whole enchilada.
You can't talk about GPUs without talking about gaming. But what's happened the last few years? They've just gotten super expensive, and we don't think they need to. Today, we're about to fix that.
What's up, everybody? I'm Lisa Pierce, and we've been working towards this day for a long time. Intel's new discrete graphics cards, the A770 and A750, are now available for purchase in select markets worldwide. And these cards deliver great performance on modern titles at extremely competitive prices. But beyond performance, we're determined to bring you a modern GPU for our first entry into this market. Hardware ray tracing, XeSS, our AI supersampling technology, overclocking, and fully featured media capabilities, including hardware AV1 encoding, are all packed into the first product, codenamed Alchemist. It's been a tremendous effort to get here today. Our teams have been hard at work for several years, and we know we have work in front of us. But just for today, let's play.
Intel ARCs. Oh God, now we're talking about the good stuff. Okay, so if you hadn't realized, Intel made a GPU, right? And they completed the whole RGB in the GPU market. Red, R, is red for AMD. G, NVIDIA, and B is Intel. So we got RGB in the GPU market. And this is not new. I mean, ARC has been out for since October. And it launched pretty poorly, honestly. It launched poorly. It's a new graphics card for the mainstream consumer. They've had Intel GPUs, but it didn't go, it wasn't such a public launch like this one. And the Intel ARCs, they performed really poorly out of the box. The software was rudimentary. The desktop software didn't even have a UI. It was a basic window, like a browser. It was pretty poor at the beginning. But Intel was able to tweak the software, update the drivers, and over time, the card was performing 40% faster than during launch. And you saw the price point they were selling it at, $300 on launch. Now, I had no reason to buy an Intel ARC at the time, right? I have a perfectly mid 2080, right? I was not buying computer parts last year because nothing broke. And this Intel ARC is so... I think the card looks super cool. All right. Specs aside, performance aside, I just love how the card looks. I think it's the coolest looking piece of hardware I've ever seen. The second would be the Logitech Lightspeed, right? But honestly, there's no good reason, right? But I just love how it looks. Fine, but let's talk about the specs, right? Because you don't buy a graphics card to look at it, although I would if I had the money. I would actually buy it and put it on the wall, mint. I wouldn't touch it because I'm a psychopath. But all right, so the ARC A770, how did it perform? How does it perform? It performs like a RTX 3060. in that range, right? So we're up to RTX 4 series, right? And now, and then, you know, last generation was the 3 series. I have a 2 series. So it's performing okay. It's pretty stable overall in modern games like Fortnite and stuff. But when you talk about like higher end resolutions, like beyond 1080p, that's kind of where the arc is falling off a little bit. But overall, like it's a solid performer for modern games. But what about the old games? Well, the arc was they kind of fixed it in some of the drivers. Now they support DirectX 9, and overall it's a really good value for your money, especially compared to like $1,000 GPUs from Nvidia. Nvidia has really expensive, albeit well-performing cards at the very top end, but very expensive cards. Nvidia has a reason to be concerned because this Intel Arc is only the start of a multi-year program that Intel is planning. So what we saw was the Alchemist, right? The Intel Arc is Alchemist. Next year, we're expecting the Battle Mage, right? So if you hear about the Intel Battle Mage, that's what they're talking about. They're talking about the next generation of Intel GPUs. After that, we're going to see Celestial and then Druid. So my expectation, one graphics card a year. And if you notice, it's A, B, C, D, right? So is the naming scheme going to change for the Intel Arcs, right? Is it going to be Arc B770, right? I like the A7, please, I don't know. They shouldn't change it to B. If they change it to B, I'm going to be very sad. I don't know. I just love this card so much. I don't have it. I've never played with a computer that has a card, but I don't know. It's just, it's so cool to me. All right. So what's the problem? What's going on, right? So, well, if our expectation is that the Alchemist series, right, you could see on the left side here, in Q3, they were starting to really push the ARC, the A770s and A750. This is, we're probably going to see the Battle Mage in Q2. Keep in mind, this is a leak from Red Gaming Tech, so if it's incorrect, you could blame Red Gaming Tech. But for the most part, it seems to make sense. They're not going to release the Battle Mage this year, that's for sure. Intel has regrouped and stopped manufacturing the A770s, should we call them A series? I don't know what to call them. But they stopped manufacturing directly. You could still find these cards by third-party manufacturers. But, you know, it's kind of scary how far this card has come. And when Battle Mage comes out, like, it's going to be a really big deal because Intel's main thing is price to performance. And to release something like a 3060 at like $300 is still really good because Nvidia does overprice their stuff. Take a look at this one. Oh, is this the wrong slide. So yeah, if you look at the market share in Q4 2021, Intel did have GPUs back then. They were just not, you know, they had their graphics. It was just not the ARCs that we know. And over time in 2022, we start seeing a significant increase. the quarter 3 and quarter 4, the difference in the Intel GPU market share, like it's because the software wasn't up to speed. Like in quarter 3 when it launched, it was not doing well. It didn't perform well. And then, like I said, they optimized it. That's when people really start buying the cards. Because honestly, paying like $1,200 for a card is too much nowadays. When I guess back then, like you could buy a whole computer, a gaming computer, for 12 grand or 1,200, right? And like the average computer cost is going up. If you look at motherboards, motherboard prices are going up for no reason as well, right? So there's a lot of companies like really pushing the hardware angle and like increasing the prices. So in a way, Intel is like an underdog, but also kind of like the savior of the GPU market. At least that's how a lot of people see it. But so what is the NVIDIA doing about Intel, right? Intel's starting to get more market share. Intel is starting to gain public favor. So NVIDIA goes back to some of their older tactics, and you might know it as the GeForce Partnership Program, because NVIDIA has supposedly have been going around to manufacturers and saying you cannot manufacture Intel components, otherwise we'll stop sending you chips. So they're actually going to manufacturers being like, hey, if you work with Intel, you won't work with us. And because NVIDIA has such a big market share, still, it's dwindling a little bit, but it's losing market share just a little bit, but it still has such a big portion. Like manufacturers, what can they do? They're being strong-armed to stay in business, right? Because that's what Intel's doing right now. They're looking for manufacturers and they're setting up those contracts to release the Battle Mage. So there's this YouTube channel. They said that they have a little insight to the behavior of NVIDIA. On Telegram, they said, a little bird told me that Intel is already looking for partners to produce its next generation graphics cards, naturally in China. But as soon as they turned to manufacturers for the first echelon familiar to us, and it became known to NVIDIA began to threaten its partners that if they took up Intel, then NVIDIA would no longer work with them, and they would not receive chips. That means your supportive infrastructure, your finance, like the biggest part of your financial backbone is stripped away if you are manufacturing graphics cards. Because we looked at the market share. AMD, they're lucky to get 10%. NVIDIA has a lot of it, right? Yeah, AMD still has graphics cards out there, but it's apparently nowhere compared to NVIDIA's footprint. So this harkens back to the GeForce Partnership Program. Basically, in 2018, NVIDIA made this partnership program and they advertised it. And they basically said, if you work with us, we will promote your product on social media. We will work directly with you to give you all the support you need to make our cards the best. And they would do advertising for your brand if you join the GeForce Partnership Program. But what that also means is if you don't join the partnership program and your competitors do join it, your competitors just get an edge. they get an edge because they don't have to pay as much for marketing. They're getting some funding from Nvidia to push products. And if you don't join, you're being like kind of forced out of being a competitor for manufacturing. Yeah, Nvidia does have a lot of weight. Sokro says, but it's good to see Intel coming up. Yeah. I mean, Intel has been around for a long time, and it's kind of ironic, right? Like early 2000s, AMD and Intel, they were like bitter enemies in processor wars, and they're still like competing now in terms of processors, right? But now it almost seems like they're unifying to tackle Nvidia in the GPU market. It's, I don't know, that's how I envision it. So the GeForce program, going back to that, the GeForce program, basically, if you're not in the club, will cut you out and you could freeze out in the cold. And immediately when they announced that, there was a public outlash. People are like, oh, this is anti-consumerist, right? Because if you are preventing a partner from manufacturing other brands, then you're limiting the options for consumers by strong-arming these manufacturers. Because that's basically what happens. So NVIDIA, when they partner with someone, that partner cannot utilize the same other GPU brands with their with the manufacturer brand. I guess the best way to say it is, Asus has ROG, right? Republic of Gamers. It's a gaming brand. It's supposed to highlight a certain enthusiast level of gaming technologies. Well, if Asus partners with NVIDIA, then AMD cannot put a graphics card under the ROG brand. Asus has to make up a new brand, and I think it was called Ares, so that they could put their cards in, right? So that's how NVIDIA is doing things. And I just want to know, like, what do you guys think? Because it does sound like NVIDIA is a bad guy in this, but how do you actually feel about NVIDIA's aggressive business practices? Is this acceptable? I mean, I do think it hurts the consumer, but I don't know. Let me know what you think. I don't know, NVIDIA doing NVIDIA things. I'm not surprised, honestly. There was a meme for NVIDIA where people are calling them Ngredia, which I kind of get, but I'll tell you my thoughts after this. I'm gonna get a drink. All right, back. So, yeah. So, NVIDIA, aggression. If I were to put it, this is a person on top, a company who is on top, making sure that no one else can even come close enough to take their title. They're highly protective of what they do, and that's perfectly understandable for a big company. And to even go to extent of throwing threats around in the industry, it's still understandable. And maybe that's a hot take, but that's business. And it sucks that it is this way. It affects, obviously, diversity when it comes to hardware options. And when there are less options, it becomes harder for consumers to find a product that works for them. And eventually, you know, if we all have NVIDIA cards, you could very much expect the prices to skyrocket, especially based upon the way they do things. They justified themselves when they added like 50% on top of their cards, a 50% like margin. So if this is going to if NVIDIA is going to continue conducting business the way they are, things may only get worse. And I think it will get worse because of that. And that's why I'm also like so crazy about like the whole Intel GPUs, is because that just changes the whole landscape. NVIDIA's technologies, they have not only do they go to manufacturers to break them down and to stop them from adopting like new GPUs from other brands, but they even go attack other companies from the software side. Do you guys remember Crysis? Do you remember when Crysis was in development that they showed, I think it was during development, they showed a piece of architecture in the game, and it was just a stone divider, like one of those highway dividers that you see. And it was talking about the tessellation. Basically, to sum it up, it's just they're using higher processing power to render this highway divider. And when that happens, it increases the system requirements, the hardware requirements for gamers to run the game. And in this case, Crysis was an NVIDIA partnered game at the time. There was no official nod to AMD or support to AMD. And NVIDIA has gone out of their way to tell the Crytek developers to put more tessellation in their game, because NVIDIA knows that the AMD cards do not handle tessellation well. Because their competitor cannot handle it well, NVIDIA went out of their way to throw money at a developer to put something that sabotages them. It's like imagine you and I, right? Obviously, I'm going to win, but imagine you and I in a boxing ring, right? And you're highly allergic to shellfish. And what do? I make the boxing gloves out of fish. That's what I did. I slipped the boxing organizers $200 billion and tell them we're making the gloves out of fish. And we're going to fight to the death. Like, obviously, you're going to have a harder time. And even if we had regular gloves, you would have a hard time, because I've been working out. Anyways, no, I'm kidding. Yeah, but that's the level of sabotage, basically, that they did to make sure, you know, like, hey, if I can't win, you're gonna lose. You know, like that's their mentality with things. And I understand that. I have some of that mentality as well, right? If I can't win, I'm going to take you down with me. So maybe people feel that might be wrong. Maybe not. But I definitely understand why they're doing it. But if Intel's Battle Mage, which is, by the way, Intel's Battle Mage is expected to perform at a RTX 4080. Basically top of the line now, but release next year for less. like, if this is true, then what is that going to do to a gaming landscape? Like, what are people going to do? Are they going to start buying Intel? For sure, Intel's like software is still very fresh, still very new. And no matter how powerful the card, if your software sucks, your card will suck, and therefore your game will be laggy. But XeSS is Intel's upscaler, and it does all right. According to some of the things I've seen, it performs all right. It's not extremely subpar. Intel is pretty new to the GPU game, but you know, they're a smart company. They know what they're doing. Yeah. Yeah, they're gonna have to do it. And I think if they don't do it with the Battle Mage, it's gonna be hard to adopt. Like, the timing attack is next year because according to leaks and speculation, NVIDIA's 5 series is not going to release next year. NVIDIA's 5 series is going to release in 2025. So if Intel's Battle Mage gets released next year, then they have a surefire, like, open window to release a card that does not have a direct competitor. And what do I expect to happen? I actually expect the 5 series for NVIDIA's graphics cards for the performance to be strong and the price to be a little more fair. And they're going to change that price based upon how Intel does next year. If Intel does really well, then we're going to have a great NVIDIA year. NVIDIA might change its tune. But if Battle Mage isn't what I hope it to be, or a lot of people hope it to be, that NVIDIA is just going to continue releasing ultra premium products with an ultra premium price tag. Yeah, curious to see, Sokro says, curious to see how it is, but when gamers have so many options, let's see what makes it different. I mean, yeah, the AMD cards perform pretty well. I mean, I know, if I had to compare, right, an AMD card, an Intel card, NVIDIA card, and they all perform the same, and they're all priced the same, I would pick Intel. One, because I have an Intel processor, and there are integrations that would make it perform a little better on mine, right? Two, I really like the color blue. That's basically it. I've said this many times. The color blue is going to make me like your product more. Although I use red a lot. I use red a lot because it's effective, but see, it's fucking red everywhere. But I really like the color blue. And sometimes it just gets as superficial as that. But anyways, yeah, so that's kind of today's show. I just want to say thank you guys for tuning in with that. At the beginning, if you missed the beginning of the show, I said that I'm kind of down because my grandma's like pretty sick. She's kind of expected in like a week or two. She's just in like a lot of pain, and you know, my family visits her yeah, like every day. So yeah, it's just kind of like my mind is kind of like lost on it. Yeah, it does suck. Things happen. Yeah. She's it's terminal for her. I mean, she said something about like yeah, she has said some things that just makes us very sad because it's terminal. So Anyways, yeah, not to get you guys down, but I just share a little bit. So also, today's format, the back end was done differently. If you liked, if there were some things you liked about this format, please let me know. For the most part, what you see is the same. But in terms of the discussion and things are a little more open, tell me if you like that more. For the first dozen or so episodes of the Tech Talk series, I'm going to be like trying different things and changing things around to figure out what works and how I want to take the show. Yeah, but that being said, this show is going on YouTube and Spotify. I added Spotify last week. So if you want to listen to the Tech Talk on the go, you can do that. The links are here in chat. If you're watching on YouTube or Spotify right now, thank you for your support. Feel free to reach out to me on my social medias if there's like a topic you want to talk about. In the future, I kind of want to do some like deep dives or something about certain topics, but we'll see. For the time being, we're going to stick to a weekly schedule every Sunday, 1 p.m. Eastern time. I will be live on Twitch with the Tech Talks with Sharlit show. The name is still pending. I'm going to say that every time. And yeah, like feel free to chime in, share your opinions, because I may have some like hot takes that just, I don't know. I need different perspectives to align myself, right? So yeah, definitely I'm curious to see what you think about future topics. And for now, we're gonna go, and I'm going to roll into a gaming stream after this. So hold on for Diablo 4. I got a new rogue build you might want to check out. It's pretty awesome. By the way, did you hear about Warzone's partnership with The Boys? Yeah. The Boys TV show, Homelander, Laser Eyes. Apparently, Warzone now has superpowers, and some people are saying it's ruining the game. Because the superpowers, like everyone's like flying around, lasering everyone. It's like, I think that's such a dramatic deviation from what they were doing. Oh, it's takedowns? Okay. It seems, yeah, it doesn't seem to be that. Why can't we just do Milsim? But people wanted them in. People wanted it in because it's janky and fun because of that. But once it's in the game, it's like one of those things you add to your game and it takes a little bit away from it every time you add something like that. Yeah, I don't know. That's how I feel, right? Like, I would want to keep it like Milsim because I like those more. But when you start adding this, then the next time you add content, what is it going to be? You have to one up your content. That's why you don't make significant changes, significant leaps to your game. Otherwise, you end up like adding like Spider-Man, and then you're like Spider-Man's like webbing people, and then you build a wall, and then they're gonna add wall building to like Warzone, and then I'm just gonna like lose my mind.